Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Vishal Gewali again from Queen's University, Kingston, Canada. And today I wanted to share some of my feelings about the peer review process. And I understand that a lot of peer reviewers from especially low and middle income countries uh, who are now being actively engaged in research and are contributing by doing peer reviews have not had any opportunity to have like a formal peer review mentorship session. So I wanted to take that opportunity and share some of my feelings about how to do the peer review process well, how to be a good peer reviewer. And although you may not feel like there is any tangible reward to being a great peer reviewer in the short term, but I can tell you that there are a number of rewards that are not very apparent on the first look, but there are a lot of rewards that you may get as a good peer reviewer. And the rewards that I'm talking of would be, for example, you would be looked upon very favorably by a journal editor, the journal editor that sends you papers for peer review and receives good feedback from you will be very happy with you, and that will have uh, positive consequences in the sense that I have done a number of peer reviews over the years, more than 100, I guess, by now, for a number of different oncology journals. And some of the journals where I regularly do peer review, they look upon the papers that I author as an author very favorably because they know that I always raise those critical points when I'm a peer reviewer. So there is a certain trust among the editors that I have taken care of those points in my own paper as an author. Sometimes as a peer reviewer, you can ask for expedited peer review and other favors from the editor, the legitimate favors, and they'll look upon it nicely because they know that you are they have received your service as a peer reviewer for many papers. And when you say that your particular paper sometimes is of importance to be published immediately and you would want an expedited peer review, they'll consider that. And sometimes, as an author, you receive bad peer review feedbacks, but you feel that those were not legitimate and they were making comments that were not pertinent to your paper. Then you can write to the editor saying, for example, reviewer third made comments that were not genuine, and that sabotaged my paper. Can you look into it again, like sort of an appeal process? And the editors would not necessarily be offended by that because they know that you are a good peer reviewer yourself. And those are some benefits that you will receive as an author when you have become a good peer reviewer. And once you have performed well as a peer reviewer, the journal editors who are asking you for peer reviews, these are top people in the field. That's why they are journal editors. So that's a way how they get to know you better, and you get to know them better, and that opens up a door of opportunities beyond the journal relationship. There might be organizers of a meeting and they might invite you as a speaker. So I'm just trying to give you examples saying that although it feels like doing peer review is very unrewarding and time-consuming thing with no tangible benefits in the short term, but there will be benefits that you haven't yet noticed. And these are important for an early career researcher, and especially for colleagues from low and middle income countries who haven't had other opportunities to know these top people in person and to build that relationship. So having said that, I wanted to talk today more about how to do a proper peer review. So the most important principle in this process is do unto others as you would like things to be done unto you, right? So whenever you are doing a peer review of any paper, first try to imagine your own experience when you have been an author. And when you have been an author and you have received peer review comments from journals, how did you feel? What type of peer review comments made you feel better, made you feel good? And what type of peer review comments made you feel bad? And what type of peer review comments made your paper better and you felt glad about addressing those comments and you felt that your paper has improved a lot after addressing those comments, versus what type of comments made you just angry and you felt that the peer reviewer was hostile. So that's the fundamental principle. So when you are on the opposite side of the process, when you are a peer reviewer, so you have to return that favor. So you would not want to be a peer reviewer that will make someone's day or week go bad, that would ruin someone's day or week or month. You would want to be a helpful peer reviewer. As the name suggests, you are a peer, you are a friend. Uh, who will help someone else's paper to be better than what it already is. So there are a couple of principles that we have to adhere to, and these are not written, laid down principles, but these are just certain principles as a colleague, as an academician, as a friend. So first, do not always criticize the paper or the science. Never criticize the authors. So never go to criticizing people or authors. Don't say the authors are foolish, or the authors are stupid, and the authors would have done this and done that. Always criticize the science. A and B, never criticize someone's ability to write well in English, because English is not the first language for many people in the world. It's not even my own first language. So a lot of the researchers throughout the world, they use a different language in their daily life, and they are still putting in effort to write the research in English language and submit to the journal. So in confidential comments to the editor, you can tell that the language is not up to the mark, because obviously we do not want very difficult to read paper getting published. So we would want a standard paper to be published, but leave it up to the editor. Just tell the editor in confidential comments that there was problems with the English language and you had a hard time reading it. And maybe the editor will suggest them to go through a standard English language correction in company, or maybe they will suggest getting some English language help through a native English speaker and things like that. But as a peer reviewer, I find it very offensive when people just look at the affiliations of the authors and just say, "Oh, these people don't know how to write in good English, and they should improve their English and submit back." That's quite offensive. So never do that. We are not like grammar police. Peer reviewers are consulted for their expertise on the content on science, not for the expertise on English language. And the third thing I want to say is, if there are different types of peer review. The peer review process that I like the most is double-blind peer review, where the reviewers do not know who the authors are and the authors do not know who the reviewers are. But unfortunately, that's not a very common process in many journals. Many journals employ a single blind peer review where the authors do not know who the reviewers are, but the reviewers can see the authors' names and affiliations. And if that's the case, always try to get a sense of whether the first author or the corresponding author is a junior person, like a resident or a fellow or an early career researcher, because for these early career papers, that could be the first paper that person has ever written in his life. That could be the second paper that person has ever written. And if we are very nasty in our comments as peer reviewers, which we should never be, irrespective of who the first author or the last author or the authors are, but I'm saying that we should give special consideration when the first authors or the corresponding authors and the main authors are from low-income countries, or are trainees, early career researchers who are for whom that paper is the first paper in the whole career. So they are just trying to take some baby steps into the process, and they are not well versed with the whole field. It goes without saying that early career researchers need more encouragement and inspiration. And same is true for researchers from low-income countries who see hundreds of patients every day and still find the time in the midnight to write their research work and make it into a paper. It's not easy on them. So as a peer reviewer, we're supposed to encourage them, we're supposed to inspire them. That does not mean we should let go bad science and let it be published. We need to, as a peer reviewer, it's our responsibility to control that process. But we can give feedback in a positive way, in a way that encourages people and inspires them to work harder and do better, versus just making them feel bad and making them give up the whole process. I have seen many young colleagues, my friends who have given up whole process of doing research and writing papers simply because their first couple of papers received very nasty peer reviews. After that, as to the actual process of reviewing a paper itself, um, there are a number of things to look after. Statistics may not be everyone's field of expertise. I find a number of colleagues from low-income countries asking me, uh, I'm happy to do the peer review. I want to do this peer review, but I do not know the statistics behind the paper. So maybe I'm not able to give a good comment. For that concern, I want to say that everybody does not have to be a statistician. If that paper has complex statistics, then the journal editor will definitely send it to a statistics editor whose expertise is in statistics. If they are sending the paper to you as a clinician, then maybe we just want to know your opinion as a clinician, whether that paper makes sense in terms of the clinical experience that you have. And the other common issues with the peer review process that I wanted to share today include, for example, as a peer reviewer, we are supposed to look at whether or not the paper actually answers the question it says it is going to answer. So the introduction, for example, may say that they want to test whether a hypothesis of X being linked to Y is true or not. So if that's the hypothesis, then in the methods, you need to make sure that the methods that they have used actually are good enough to answer that particular hypothesis, and the results actually answer that hypothesis, and the discussion puts that into context. And the important thing to take care of here is sometimes and the authors propose that they want to test a certain question, but they end up answering something completely different. And the bigger issue is in discussion, when this discussion is the place where a lot of spin and hype can go into. So in discussion, many people can make very overblown claims that the results do not support. And that is where, as a peer reviewer, we have to give our comments. That the claims that you're making are not supported by data, or there have been spins. But at all the point, our duty is to remain professional, remain as a peer. So we should send our peer reviewer comments, assuming that these comments will be live. This will be seen by people. Your name will be out there. It will not, but you should assume that if that comment is out into the public with your name on it, you'll still feel proud of it. You'll still feel proud of what you have written, and you'll stand by it. The other thing about looking after a peer review, looking after a paper as a peer reviewer, is that you should look at the entire package, like not just read the manuscript, but also look at the tables. There can be many errors in the tables, figures, the supplements, and if it's a clinical trial, or if it has a protocol, even the protocol, because sometimes I have seen that the paper ends up highlighting a number of findings that were not actually planned. So these were not pre-planned questions, and they end up not highlighting the major findings that were actually pre-planned hypothesis, because they do not support the agenda. So that can happen a number of times. But at the end of the day, this is a skill, and you'll continue to learn as you do more and more peer reviews. If you have a mentor nearby who works in the same place where you work, or who is very close to you, it does not have to be even like physically close, who is close to you and can guide you as an online tutor, then it is very helpful to get their advice for the first 5 or 6 peer review comments that you write. Or sometimes it's just helpful to get a sample of the peer review comments that someone you respect has done before. Like when I started writing my peer review comments, I first got a couple of peer reviewers comments from 3, 4 different people for different papers that they had reviewed in the past. But I just wanted to get a flavor of how they write it, how they organize it. One good way to organize your comments is into major comments and minor comments. Major comments are like important flaws that should be fixed, and without fixing that paper is not a good contribution. And minor flaws are some small issues that need fixing, but they are not like fatal flaws. But at the end of the day, there are some peer reviewers who assume that uh, who give comments as if they were one of the co-authors of the paper. As a peer reviewer, you need to understand that there are different styles of writing. There are different ways in which people look at the data. So unless it's a fatal flaw or unless it's a mistake, um, as a peer reviewer, you do not have to change the whole content of the paper to your test. It's not your paper; it's somebody else's paper. So as a peer, you are there just to give feedback to help improve the paper. It does not even have to fit your principles in terms, or it does not even have to fit your ideologies. For example, I have I have signed off on a number of papers. I have given very good reviews on a number of papers whose conclusions I do not even like, but they were scientifically sound. They were scientifically sound. There was no problem with the science, and but they did not. But they were not to my taste. Uh, but I had no issues with the science. So um, I have been on the receiving end of some very nasty comments from peer reviewers, especially in my early days. Uh, there was one peer reviewer who just gave a 2-sentence comment saying, "This person does not know what he is talking about. I just suggest him to go and read the whole ovarian cancer literature and come back." So those are the type of peer review comments that are hostile. Like that person should never be a peer reviewer, and I know who that person is, though, and that person is a top expert, and I was on, I guess, year 3 or year 4 of my training, and to receive such a comment from such a top level expert in the field when you are just a trainee who has not even graduated, that's quite heartbreaking. But uh, if you look into it, how did that comment help me? It did not. It tried to break me down. There was, like, as a peer reviewer, you're supposed to be helpful. Even if that person did not like my paper, that person was supposed to tell me in specific points, these are the particular points that I don't like. And you can't just say you don't like, I'm not writing a paper for the peer reviewer to like it. You have to make specific comments why the science is bad and how it can be improved. You can't just say this is bad. Like, you can't just say you can't just say and complain that this looks bad. You have to give specific examples how it can be better. That's what you are supposed to do as a peer review. Um, and the other thing is that I guess if, like, a lot of peer reviewers think that it's their duty to write like 10, 11, 12 points for the authors to change and improve upon. But if the paper is good, if the science is good, and there are no issues with the article, just because you are a peer reviewer does not mean you have to come up with a list of 10 or 12 points for the authors to improve. Like, sometimes you can just say that the paper is fantastic. There are like, there are strong points of the paper. I read the whole paper and I can find nothing to suggest the author. That's perfectly fine. And actually, the authors are quite happy. If you don't, like, as a peer reviewer, you don't have to nitpick every little thing. You should always, as I keep saying, you should always imagine the time when you have been an author. So you don't enjoy receiving a list of 20 points from the reviewers, small points suggesting please remove the word "the" from line 20 of page number 5, because that just delays the publication of the paper. That takes a lot of time for the authors to go and revise and resubmit the whole thing. So if it's not a big deal, just let it go. Um, and Yeah, as I said, you can just organize into major and minor comments in the first round of review. If there are major comments, then you can just give your major and minor comment at the same time so that they can divide the whole thing together. And if there are no major comments and all you have is just one minor comment, then don't just go for looking after other 50 small things that you can find. That does not necessarily make you a good peer reviewer. Uh, and oh, by the way, I forgot. One of the perks of being a good peer reviewer is that if you get a very good paper and you have peer reviewed it very well, then the editor will ask you to write an editorial for the paper and accompanying commentary. So that is another part that I forgot to mention in the beginning. So yeah, especially for early career people and colleagues from low and middle income countries who want to hone their skills as a peer reviewer and who want some advice, I'd always be happy to chat and share some of my feelings. Uh, the basic principle is covered in that single sentence I said at the beginning: "Do unto others as you would like things to be done unto you." So that's the whole gist of the peer review process.